What's going on, guys? Hope you are doing well. Devon Larratt, Levan Saginashvilli, part two. It is going to be, once again, the most interesting and most talked about build-up as it draws closer. And I want to weigh in today on my thoughts on this match, how each of these guys really can win it, how each of these guys really can lose it. Have a look at a few things that have been going on lately, and try to make some sense of it. Of course, nothing is certain in the world of arm wrestling. Predictions are never guaranteed. Levan obviously won last time that these guys faced, but it is one of those things that truly is a sport where anything's possible. Now, for anything to be possible, we need to be within a certain strength gap of each other. Now, that's the main question. Last time these guys faced, Levan Saginashvilli broke Devon Larratt. He quite literally caused him to injure. Devon did nothing wrong. He positionally got into a great defensive position, but Levan just simply pulled through it and broke Devon's bicep. So, is the strength gap now sufficiently closed enough that it is a match? That's the most important question that we need to know. Obviously, Devon's performances since that match have been pretty impressive. Most importantly, or most impressively, is what he did to Hermes Gasparini, where we did see Levan struggle somewhat more to defeat Hermes Gasparini when they faced. Now, that factor is probably, for me, the reason why I believe that the gap has sufficiently closed that it's a match. Now, we have also seen just today, I saw that Levan released a 70-kilo pronated lift. He did it pretty comfortably too. He did it with slightly different form in respect to wrist angles and all that sort of stuff, but his forearm, most importantly, was definitely at that parallel mark, and he lifted it very easy. Now, when I talked about the wrist differences, Devon likes to kick his wrist back. Levan had a slight bend forward. Now, I actually, as someone who trains this lift reasonably regularly, I've experimented with and felt the differences in that wrist kick back versus that wrist slightly cupped version. And it does change things. I'm not going to go as far as to say one is particularly easier than the other, but I think that kicking your wrist back feels very different. It imparts a very different pressure and failure point through your arm. I feel like you can kind of twist up and get torqued up, and when you kick back your wrist, you can almost protect your pronation a little better than if your wrist is slightly bent. But all of that said, it is a very interesting lift, and both of those guys now lifting 70 kilos. I would say that Devon appears to be working slightly harder in the lift. Now, when it comes to winning this match, like I said, there are a few factors at play. Devon, I think, is somebody who has that better endurance. We've seen Levan with the oxygen mask on after defeating Hermes Gasparini, and he truly was running out of steam in the last moments of that. He didn't even complete rounds 5 and 6. He just went to 4, got the job done, said, "I'm out, I'm done, no more for me." Devon, on the other hand, he's got such good positional efficiency that it's likely that he will be able to continue for as long as required. There are very few people. Gennady Kvikvini are the only person who has demonstrated an ability to out-endure Devon Larratt. Now, endurance is one of those interesting things where we talk about physical endurance under maximum effort. Now, I actually don't think that Devon Larratt has all that impressive endurance in that respect. What I think he achieves is exceptional positional efficiency and enough physical peak force in critical moments to allow him to rest indefinitely better than his opponent can. And that is something that is part and parcel with being the arm wrestler who has a longer arm and a longer hand. You do find yourself with the opportunities to have more control in the match, and you have less of a need or less of an urgency to finish the match. When you are the shorter guy, you're stuck holding on. You're stuck with the pressure of being the person who needs the pin. It often feels like when you're in that position as the shorter armed person that you're suffocating, you're drowning, you're in an urgent situation where the longer it goes on, the worse it becomes. Now, that is true of the hand and wrist. It isn't, however, true of the arm. A lot of the time, and again, Gennady Kvikvini's match against Devon is probably the best example of this. Even though Devon had that hand and wrist wrapped up at the time, Devon's arm actually ended up gassing out. Gennady was able to maintain a shoulder line position right in the defensive pocket where Devon could, even though he'd taken everything there was to take in terms of rotation in hand, Gennady just putting his shoulder behind it and insisting that Devon had to finish the match and rather than pinning himself, led to, for somewhat people, a surprising situation, but for others less so surprising, a situation where Gennady was able to push through center. And Devon's bicep did gas out. Now, when I think about matches, how this match is likely to go, I think the match is going to be fought first of all at the top of the table. Both of these gentlemen are in the game of top rolling from the go. Devon with the longer arm, and I'm going to say the more conditioned pronation. Levan Saginashvilli with more bicep strength, more back pressure. I'm going to say more wrist flexion as well. Where these guys, I think, will win or lose the fight is not in any of those things that we just described, but in fact, wrist rise. When I think about vulnerable moments that I've seen in Devon's matches over the last few seasons, I always saw the slight panic in his eyes or it'd go from him talking and being confident that the victory's wrapped up to focused effort face, shaking as hard as he can, redlining when his wrist rise was being potentially compromised. I think about the round against Hermes Gasparini where Hermes, albeit was losing quite poorly to Devon, there was a round outside of straps where Hermes was trying to encourage Devon to come into a hook, and there was a little bit of purchase there for Hermes at one moment in time. The vulnerability that I witnessed in Devon's hand at that time was that he couldn't handle the static wrist rise situation. And he was not going to come to that hook because Hermes would have had the high ground on rotation had he have done that at the time. Thankfully for Devon at the time, Hermes did eventually gas out in that position. And the rest is history. And Levan, if I think about Levan's matches where he struggled against Hermes, it was in a overpronated situation where Hermes' flop wrist side pressure defense was enough to actually get on the bicep of Levan Saginashvilli. Now, I don't expect Devon to hunt that position, but that is a position that could potentially come around later on in the match if fatigue levels are appropriate. I definitely don't see Devon attempting to get that position from the A side, from the ready go in round one. But nor did Hermes Gasparini. Hermes Gasparini really used his dominant arm and back pressure to achieve that stop. So the matches for me, the opportunities for victory really come down to a few different factors. I think that the wrist rise is going to be critically important, and the winner of that battle most likely goes on to win the match. I think patience is a huge factor, particularly for Levan Saginashvilli. Although he is going to be the person that I think has the impetus to actually finish the match early, he has to be careful. Attacking too early against Devon Larratt when he is in form in respect to his pronation and his energy levels will be something that will backfire greatly against Levan. Levan must not allow his wrist flexion to break. If his wrist flexion truly cracks open, Devon will win the match. I don't see a scenario where Levan has the endurance with his wrist back to be able to do what Gennady did, or to be able to pull in a flop wrist style offensively. I could be wrong, but I just don't see that in Levan's game. I see Levan wanting to maintain fundamentals. Now, given that Levan has greater bicep pressure, there is, of course, the opportunity for him to just be strong, be static at center, be as tall as he can, and maintain patience whilst Devon tries to pronate. There's risk, of course, in that scenario. If he does that and stays static and strong at center, and he finds that Devon actually outlasts him in that position, then it's all downhill, it's all over. Devon will win from there. But that is a choice that we might see from Levan. We might see him try to be strong and static at center and wait for the moment where Devon's pronation just starts to fade before going on the attack. Or we might just see the blast from the center at the go like we did in the last match they had. Now for Devon, like I said, it is one of those things where we can see clearly what his best weapons are. It's the rising pronation, positional nastiness. he's going to look to crack the hand and wrist of Levan. Finishing Levan will be interesting from there. Devon has a great game in a rotational sense. Once he's cracked someone's hand, he will climb all over their rotation. He'll get inside, he'll get his shoulder behind, and look to absolutely wrap up all of the efficiencies. Now, most people pin themselves in that scenario. Gennady has showed that you don't have to. But does Levan have that? I don't feel like he does. I feel like this match is such a big match that both men are going to be feeling a sense of urgency to get this job done. They both want this written in the history books. Obviously, Levan looking to solidify a legacy. Devon looking to rectify the history of the past losses. Either way, it will be a big match. My prediction so far, look, I feel like after seeing the 70-kilo lift from Levan today that he is strong enough to do it again. But my gut feel over the last 6 months has been that Devon will win this match, that Devon will crack the wrist of Levan. So I think it's actually going to come down to execution. I think both men are strong enough to win this one. I think we have a match. Let us know. What do you think?